What's happening?
What's up? We are actually appropriately drinking Budweiser.
Nice.
What's up? Remember?
I do.
You remember?
I do.
All right, let me share it too.
Thank you, Han Solo, Star Wars.
Remember?
But hey, what's happening, guys? Yeah, we're getting together to review Solo, a Star Wars story, and Action Point. So
two movies that everybody saw, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure we'll talk about a. Sorry, we're not just kind of like half paying attention to you, like you're our parents and we're like
what
teenagers like at the dinner table. Marcus, stop texting! Stop texting at the dinner table.
Brussels sprouts are getting cold.
Yeah, we're just sharing these to our own Facebook accounts,
so people can actually watch.
Yeah,
like they did with Solo, a Star Wars story, and Action Point. I think there was actually more people in my theater for Action Point than there were for Solo. I mean, I did see Action Point opening night, so that has something to do with it.
I didn't even think about it like that. I actually had an equal amount in Action Point that I did in Solo.
We'll get into it on the Solo episode, which we're recording today, but it was like the weirdest Star Wars movie going experience because I'm so used to going like opening night.
Same.
And the theater's packed and like usually getting there like really, really early, or if I can only get there late, then I'm like forced to like sit like up front, like my neck craned to look at the screen. And this time I like showed up like 15 minutes late, was able to still sit wherever I wanted. There was like barely anybody there. It's just a weird way to like watch a Star Wars movie with like, you know, one or two people laughing and like being able to hear what everyone's saying in the theater rather than like a big cacophony.
I'm sure we'll talk about this. I actually had could hear a pin drop in my theater. 0 laughs. I was the one who laughed in that theater. And I was like, this is bad.
I am the one who laughed.
No, but like, I don't laugh a lot for like stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I heard myself laughing, and I was the only one who laughed the entire film, I was like, man, this is weird. I would have loved to. I wasn't, again, like most of America.
Oh, by the way, show off your shirt for the.
This is. I have to come out here and represent.
I think I told you about this, but I texted my brother Johnny, and he had that exact shirt when we were younger. I have to find pictures of it, but it's like it's the same tie dye.
Yes,
and then like this just like graphic screen printed under.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I think his was higher quality back then. Yeah, this looks like they like scanned the old shirt because they didn't have that file.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's literally I bought it because I think I had the same shirt, or I know this shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know where that must have been sold at like Sears or like Kohl's or something, like some kind of department store.
Most definitely. I can almost put my finger on where it would be from. I can't. Yeah, like
JCPenney or something.
Yeah.
One of those stores.
But yeah, no, I would have loved to be at an opening of Solo, just to kind of see what that was like for this movie, which hasn't been doing well.
Like any of the other Star Wars movies, like I only saw it like a week after it came out, but any of the other Star Wars movies, I would have been like, I should have had to get there early, even a week after it came out to like be in the theater. But for me to show up like 15 minutes late and be like, oh, I can sit exactly where I would have sat if I was the only person in the theater.
And part of me thought that I was like, maybe the second weekend is gonna just, it's going to make up for the lost time or whatever.
You think because it's not competing against anything, but like
it did not do good at all. Yeah.
What is it broke some record with its bad second weekend.
Oh, I don't know that. I just know it's like
maybe it wasn't a record, but it was a steep decline. Let's see.
It's crazy how like
I just want to get the actual numbers.
I don't know. They couldn't even get the what's it called? They couldn't even get like the
66% decline in its second weekend at the box office.
Jesus.
In its second week, The solo Star Wars story is expected to bring in just $28.8 million from 4,381 locations.
Ugh.
So that was just a bad weekend. I mean, I guess Deadpool and Avengers are still out, so maybe people are seeing those. I think Black Panther is still in theaters.
Oh, it is.
So people might still be seeing those.
It is. It's like when I went to go, again, it's looking at what is playing in theaters is so insane. It's literally just like Black Panther, Deadpool, Infinity War, Solo.
Yeah.
And there's literally no room for anything else. I don't think we wanted to. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say I don't think either of us wanted to review Action Point, but we're kind of our hand was.
I wanted to see it. Just, I mean, we'll get into it on the episode.
Right.
But it has to do with my home area, my home county,
right?
Vernon, which is not far from where I lived in Newton. Turns out the movie didn't have a whole lot to do with the actual action part.
Where was the actual? Where was that supposed to be set?
In the movie, it's set in. I don't know if it's a real place, but they call it like Calico County or Calico Town or something.
Right.
And then in real life, it's set in Vernon in Sussex County.
Right. And
Calico County in the movie is in California.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a real.
That's what I was gathering from the just. I don't want to waste too much conversation because there's not a whole lot to talk about that movie. We need an episode's worth. But yeah, what a bizarre. I mean, we kind of all saw this coming though with Solo, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were predicting they were. It was such an embattled movie production wise, and then they moved the release date to May, which was like the old Star Wars release date, like they used to come out in May, and then they were doing the Christmas releases. And I saw a lot of articles talking about like, you know, it's just too much Star Wars too close together. Like I think with like Marvel, we've kind of always been used to,
right.
Or at least they eased us into like there's a new Marvel movie every like 3 months, and there are at least different characters in those movies,
right? Even
if there's cameos. And this is maybe just too much Star Wars too close together. Like we just had one in December, and now that's like less than 6 months later we're getting.
I was just surprised, like they released it during this time, so it wouldn't have to like compete with a lot, I guess. And they're really counting on like those fucking like 3-day weekend barbecue dads who are like, I know who Chewie is, like you know, like just kind of like just any dumb old fuck who knows who Han Solo is, kind of. And I don't even think they could. Not that there's an elitism of knowing more about Star Wars than the next person, but it's just like, whoa, it's. You know, it's fucking baseball and peanut butter and jelly. It's Han Solo and Chewie. You know, it's Harrison Ford. You know, it's I don't know. It's just strange. I'd love to see people kind of look back on this movie and look at what was going on with our culture during this time.
Yeah, I mean, again, stuff. There's so much to talk about in the Solo episode, so I don't mind delving into a little bit of it here. But I feel like this is the first like Star Wars movie that I'm a little disappointed with, or like less than like excited about, and like even just like it coming out was like a disappointment, kind of. You know, like I had no problems with Rogue One coming out. I had no problems with them doing a Star Wars movie for the trilogy every like 2 years. Like I'm totally fine with all of that. But then like this coming out was like, it's too close to Last Jedi, and I don't really want a Solo movie. I don't think it was like really necessary, and it's where we're starting to maybe get into like Star Wars fatigue. I feel like the third, like episode 9, is that what we're on now? Right? Yeah. Could actually do really well just because now it'll have like a year and a half in between that coming out. Because this December is December 2018. I think December 2019 is when episode 9 is supposed to come out. Right. So I feel like having that much more time, there'll be a little bit more hype going into that movie. And I feel like that one's just got to be good in terms of being JJ going back to the director's seat in Star Wars again. I think people who were people like me who are a little bit disappointed with Last Jedi and really liked Force Awakens will be really excited for the third one coming out. And it's like the conclusion of this trilogy that we've been around for.
Yeah, in retrospect, I appreciate Rogue One so much more after seeing this. I was like, I didn't know we could go to these depths.
There's some kind of like
Star Wars
like there's something about like Han Solo being a character that we already knew.
I'll get into that though.
Being a character that we already knew, and like Rogue One being like it's a situation that we're familiar with, but it's all new characters, and I think that was more exciting in a Star Wars universe, you know?
Right.
Like it's something like unknown. And it's like Rogue One could have been like anything when we're looking at the trailers. Like there's so much expectations, but then like when the movie is Solo and it's a character recreating a younger version of a beloved character, like you can already be disappointed just from the concept. You can be disappointed from the trailer. Like it's hard to be disappointed by like the Rogue One trailer because you're like, what is this movie? Like, I don't. These are new characters. I don't know who these are. I don't have expectations really, other than I hope it tells an accurate story of this like one line of about the Bothan spies in A New Hope. Like, yeah. So I feel like just in the setup and the expectations, it was easier that way for Rogue One. It's why I feel like the Boba Fett movie is not going to do well, because you can only disappoint us with Boba Fett. That was what was so cool about him, is that he was such a little part of the movies. There was so much mystery around him. Yeah, and just the fact that you're making the movie is going to kill the mystery, and it's not going to be really cool anymore.
Exactly. I think even as a little
when kid, they explored him in the prequels,
even as a little kid, you're kind of like, this is ruining Boba Fett for me. And now they have. Star Wars loves just putting, women and people of color in the director's seat. So they hired James Mangold, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to get a woman director in Star Wars someday. Just not now or anytime then soon.
That's tough because I do like James Mangold. But it is like, I don't think he's the problem. I think giving Rian Johnson another trilogy is the problem. Even the guys from the Game of Thrones another trilogy.
It's funny because we're like firing white guys and hiring them to replace the white guys that we fired.
Like if you just want to give James Mangold one film, like that's fine. But why are we giving an entire trilogy to these other people? Yeah. Like that like you could give them one and maybe let a woman director just take one out of that trilogy, or a person of color direct one out of the Game of Thrones dudes trilogy. Like, yeah, it's weird. Like no, it's not like anyone has ever directed a whole Star Wars trilogy before either. Right. Well, no. Did Lucas direct all three of the prequels? I think so, yeah. Right. Yeah. So we know how that went.
Yeah. Isn't Jon Favreau doing like a TV thing for Star Wars?
I'm sure we are really gonna get into like Star Wars overload.
I can't wait.
I just hope they can at least try to just spread it out, because that was like, I didn't mind that we were doing a whole new trilogy and stories, because it was trilogy, movie, story so it was one Star Wars movie a year. Like that's fine. That makes it like an event to look forward to around like Christmas time.
I don't know. It's just the inevitable kind of fuckery. Like as soon as you have something like Disney kind of like getting their hands on kind of this Marvel entity or the Star Wars entity, it's kind of like, things get fucking sped up.
It's not even a movie for them at that point. It's like, it's the action figures, it's the merchandise, it's the theme park stuff. It's like the buy-ins and tie-ins with other products where you have like Solo cups from Solo the movie. And like, there's so much money to be made that has nothing to do with like the box office, where like Disney might not even view Solo as a disappointment just based on the merchandising and stuff that they can do with it. And I'm sure they can open like a ride at the theme park or whatever. But let's not spend too much more time talking about Solo. We could talk about
things being exhausted.
The Marvel.
Marvel announced, I think 9 more movies to come out between 2020 and 2022. Which is just fucking insane to think about something like that far in the future. I said that to Mike and our friends, and I said that's going to be written on my suicide note. That Marvel has all these other movies coming out. It's a lot, and
it's too much.
They don't really even have titles or anything. It's just kind of like, well, we're throwing around this many ideas, and I think we've thrown X amount of money at all these different projects, so something's going to be released. It's just bananas.
Is one of them?
Are they wrong though? They keep fucking making money.
Oh yeah. I mean, and like we said in Avengers: Infinity War, the experiment paid off. So clearly, the next goal is to just build towards the next event, like 10 years from now.
Right. Yeah.
2028, next cataclysmic event. I was talking to you about this. I talk about this on the podcast a lot. I was listening to the directors DGA podcast, the Directors Guild's podcast, and they like started back up again. I guess they go on like a hiatus after like the Oscars, when not as many movies that are worth talking to the directors about are out. But after we recorded our Tully episode, I was listening to their episode on Tully because they must get the rights to the reels like so much later than the other theaters do at the DGA, which I'm assuming has to do with the fact that it's free for DGA members to see it. So I don't think they're making money. So I don't think the studios want to be like, hey, show our movie for free at your theater.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was listening to the episode and it was Jason Reitman and he was being reviewed by, I can't remember her name, Karen Sasuma. I'm totally mispronouncing her name.
What does she do?
She had worked.
What's her fucking deal?
She worked with Diablo Cody on. I can't remember the movie. I didn't see it.
Jennifer's Body.
It might have been.
It's the only other thing I know.
Because I know Jason Reitman produced that. She might have worked with Diablo Cody a few times. I can't remember what the other ones were. Marvel Disney's big Oprah origins. Oh, Shaquan. Anyway, and it was a really nice conversation, though. And there wasn't a whole lot to talk about with Tully, so they were sort of just talking about like Jason Reitman's like upbringing with film and his kind of expectations for the future of film. And he was kind of talking about like his fear for the future of film is like the Marvel movies. He says, they're great in their own right. They accomplish what they set out to do. No one can really throw a stone at the Marvel movies, but from his perspective, there is kind of a problem in terms of like there was movies that he watched when he was younger that made him want to become a filmmaker, and they usually were movies in that kind of in between indie space, in between the blockbusters where there would be like a crazy acting performance or just some weird directing choices or, just like beautiful character driven stories that make you be like, oh man, like I want to do that.
Right.
And, even like some of like the action movies that came out in like the 90s and, stuff like that. Like I can imagine someone maybe wanting to become a filmmaker watching like Die Hard or Speed or something like that. There's something cinematic and poetic about some of the action in those movies. And as much as I do like Star Wars or, some of the Marvel movies now in this like latest iteration, his point was basically that like, is anyone watching these Marvel movies or Star Wars or any of the movies that basically take up all the space in the box office? Is any of them watching them and saying, I want to become a filmmaker or I want to become an actor or getting inspired to do anything besides essentially like VFX and CGI and special effects and stuff like that?
Right.
And all of that's great and necessary, but it means that we're really just inspiring a whole generation of people who are technically talented and that we're not really getting that true like artistic vision of like I want to tell stories. And it is kind of like an old man's view on that, but I do kind of agree, like just in terms of the real estate in the movie theater, like you're talking about, like when you look up at the screen and all you see is like Deadpool 2, Deadpool 2, Deadpool 2, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Star Wars Solo, soon it's going to be like Ant-Man and the Wasp and Jurassic World and all this other like big blockbuster CGI driven action comedy movies. And where is there the space for, like Tully opens to like an awful release and like, we're not even getting to see like Rider, and we'll probably have a hard time finding a screen for like, well, maybe not Hereditary because it's a horror movie. Horror movies do. All right. But just in terms of some of these smaller movies that have these, bold choices in them and great character and actor driven performances, where do those go? And the space is clearly shrinking. Does it eventually shrink to zero? And then what happens for movies going forward?
Right.
It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. Like I've hated Marvel movies just in terms of their quality before, or what I think it means for the current state of movies, but I've never thought about it in terms of bringing up the next generation. And like, like I can remember some of the movies that I watched that made me want to be like, man, I want to make movies, right? I love movies. And I feel like we have intense experiences with some of these big budget movies, but do any of them really make us go like, man, I love film. I love movies. I want to, make movies going forward. Like, I love, some of the Marvel movies like Iron Man and stuff like that, but there's not much about them that makes me go like, oh man, I want to make movies.
I mean, Yeah.
And
yes, but also we.
I don't know that kids aren't watching these and having those experiences. That's the thing that also.
Right. That's true. I guess what you're talking about. So what did you say again? Like that you saw like that made you want to kind of.
Well, just move. Like I can remember seeing like Saving Private Ryan or Shawshank Redemption or some of the
these
movies.
Kids still have Oscar season,
the Matrix, even. Yeah,
those are all Oscar Best Picture nominees, and it's just kind of like I think all these kids are gonna.
But those movies used to occupy a bigger space in the box office and in the real estate of cinema.
That's
like Saving Private Ryan would play for a bunch of weeks and make a bunch of money at the movie theater, and they were being made by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg at sort of the heights of their careers, and now most of the focus seems to be going towards
And I think I'm just like reliving this conversation that we had, but I responded to you by eventually I said something like, my God, thank God Solo came out in the summer so that December can actually play like Oscar films.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like the minute like The Force Awakens, I love The Force Awakens, but like soon as they were like, and then we're going to do Rogue One, and then we're going to do the next trilogy, and then this, and they're all going to be released in December. And I was like, oh no, Disney's going to somehow kill, like, Oscar films. Yeah. Because, like, they'd have 3 or 4, like, Best Picture nominees, like, that just came in, and then just fucking clear them out. We got to make room for, contractually, Disney... We have to play this on 6 screens, and sorry, we just don't have the fucking room to put like these Oscar nominees up here.
Yeah.
Like
so right now, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like there's a theater by me, the Pocono Community Theater, which is like a pretty small one. I think they have 2 screens, but they'll sometimes show 3 movies at once just by rotating the viewings on 1 or 2 of the screens. But like right now, it's showing like Solo and like maybe Tully, and like they'll probably get Hereditary when that comes, and like. That's just occupying a space that like could have been occupied by something else smaller. Like The Rider, which is kind of coming to some of the indie theaters now, could be there. Or like they could have had like a later release of like Death of Stalin or some of these other movies that are still kind of going through their cycle now. But instead it gets like occupied by like Solo, when like there's a theater, like a multiplex, like 5 minutes away from that small community theater that could be showing multiple showings of Solo. And it doesn't really have any place in like an indie theater like that, but Disney can, kind of strong arm these theaters and be like, if you don't show at least one showing of Solo, then you're never going to get any of our movies ever again. And like they can kind of just like blackball these people into, showing a movie that really has no place being shown in an indie theater. Yeah.
So I don't know. That is an interesting kind of. I've sat next to like teenagers like in a bunch of movies lately, and I sat next to like a group during Solo, and like again, we're gonna talk about this in the review or whatever. I don't know if I would have time to talk about theater experience, but when we're making all these prequels and we're rehashing all this stuff and we're making all these comic book movies that are like, well, you need the inside information of this comic book to really understand what this like comic book character means, and like this thing or like this afterthought of this, yada yada yada. We're alienating these kids. These kids kind of, I don't think they saw the original trilogy, which isn't a huge problem in my eyes, because I think our generation was lucky enough to kind of see Star Wars kind of, or Lucasfilms kind of like re-release these films
at the perfect time.
Yes, yeah.
Like we might not have been raised on Star Wars if they didn't come out.
Exactly.
Whatever that 90 in the 90s that re-release of the special editions was. That's what I grew up on.
Right. So
Han didn't shoot first.
Right. And these. Yeah, they re-released them in the theaters too. It was fantastic. I got to see all 3 of the originals in the theaters. It was a really great. I don't know, but anyway, it's kind of like these kids don't care how Han Solo got his belt, and like in that way they're fucking alienated, and they didn't, and they're kind of like, all right, well, like I see these action sequences, but like a lot of what's happening is like if you don't have knowledge of the metatextual things that happen in the rest of the series, like, just think about what it's like to watch Solo with somebody who's new to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Be like, what the fuck are they looking at dice for a half an hour for? Like,
But it is kind of in between because like some of
Mhm.
those kids who may not have seen the originals may have grown up on the Clone Wars TV series. So there's stuff that happens in Solo without spoiling anything.
Yes.
That has to do or is loosely related to some stuff in like the Clone Wars series that I haven't seen. That I was like, I have to look this up. I feel alienated.
Yeah. These kids seem young, though. Like, if kids are in high school today, I don't want to age myself, but it's like, I was a kid, I feel like, when Cartoon Network released, like, the Clone Wars series or whatever, and because it was between the episode 1 and 2 or whatever. Or was it between 2 and 3? I don't know.
Are there two different Clone Wars series? I
Yeah.
like the Clone Wars was much later.
Was it?
The 3D one?
Prepping. I thought it was prepping for between two of those two movies.
I think it bridges the gap, but it comes out after they were. Because one of my young cousins who is just now in high school,
they
watched that when he was like 10 or 11.
Okay,
So that was only like a couple years ago.
that's true. All right, but still, you know,
I
you
think
could also
there
be
were
turned off by
two
those.
two Clone Wars series though.
Oh,
I might
okay,
be
right.
mistaken.
I
I didn't watch either, and I didn't care.
There's,
I think wasn't there like a 2D animated Clone Wars series?
yeah, that was by the Samurai Jack.
Yeah, that one probably came out back then. But there's a 3D one.
I think there's also a lot of 3D Star Wars things too.
There's Rebels.
There's at least multiple.
Mhm.
And Rebels makes my mind spin too. I think that series specifically has to do a lot with the end of Solo or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We'll get into it in the Solo episode, but there's a lot in Solo where I was like, I'm gonna have to Google all of this later because
Right.
it's just way over my head. Like I don't dig into like the extended universe. Star Wars for me is just the Star Wars movies and
it's just
maybe the Galaxy of Fear books.
it's fucking bizarre that you spend the most money ever on Star Wars and that you bring on this kind of like Han Solo like property to be the most accessible during fucking Barbecue Dad 3-day weekend.
And then you alienate your viewers.
Yes, yeah, and then you alienate your viewers. It's just, I don't know. It's weird. And I don't know. Fuck it. I don't know. I don't know who movies are marketing to anymore. I remember reading like this huge thing about how they were always marketing towards like the 14 to like 22-year-old male market kind of.
Mhm.
And now movies are kind of being written for fucking like
30-year-old
yeah,
nerds.
like 30 something year old nerds who are like, I know that and nobody else knows that kind of. And like it's just, and I think maybe they know what they're doing because then it plays into like clickbait stuff of like, here's 10 things you didn't know about the Solo Star Wars story because you weren't a fucking nerd before you were born. And I don't know, it's weird.
Anyway, for more thoughts about Solo, you can tune into our review coming out this Thursday with our good friend Eric Dryberg when he gets here. And then the week after that, we're reviewing Action Point, the Jackass 4 movie.
Yes.
What else do we got going on? Can we announce
It's not up on like an official website yet or anything yet, but I mean, unconfirmed, I think we can. I mean, it was confirmed via text message to me, but.
We're going to show up.
Yes.
They may not let us in.
It'll be improv. So there's a whole history to this kind of situation.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll just say that we are going to be a part of the Philadelphia Podcast Festival this year.
Second year in a row.
Just like we were last year. And we will be at the Philadelphia Improv Theater.
Fit.
Yeah, PHIT. She looking fit.
Fit. PHIT. Does that mean like the opposite? Because like PHAT is the opposite.
She looking real dumb.
She looking fit. She's out of shape. She's looking fit. Yes, PHIT, Philadelphia Improv Theater.
And that would be, I think it's like the 24th at 4 o'clock.
It's a Sunday. Oh, we have a time already?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
At
All
4
right.
p.m. Let me just look at my text message.
That's when we're going on us for?
Yes.
So I would assume that it's probably starting earlier than that. So
Yes. Fit the 24th this month at 4 p.m. So if you want to come see us live,
we'll have a more official post when they give us details, and hopefully we can post the full schedule of all the other podcasts performing before and after us, so you guys can check some of those out too.
so allegedly we are. It's not confirmed yet. And I think they're maybe trying to get more people on our time slot or our ticket. So it's
but we're probably going to do a similar thing to what we did last year. So we have that posted on YouTube, so you can check that out if you go to like our live playlist on our YouTube page. I think it's our first live episode ever. It was before we were doing the Facebook live episodes that we're doing now.
Maybe we could try to get a video of it this year too.
Yeah. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to invite, take a couple volunteers to come up on stage with us and talk about their favorite movies or least favorite movies, and we'll all give them some ratings and just have some discussion, kind of free balling from there, some talk from the audience. We're going to do a segment we did last year called Finger Blast, where we're going to have the audience call out random movies, and we're just going to try and rate them as fast as possible. And
I don't know if I like that segment at all. It was a nice in theory, but then as soon as people started yelling out things, and Michael and I were just sitting there, we're like, we haven't watched that. we haven't
Hopefully
watched
we'll
that.
have a younger crowd
Yes.
this year. There's a lot of older movies being called out. They're like, I haven't
Yes.
watched that. Don't really care to watch that.
We'll definitely have guests though. That was my favorite. That was a surprisingly. I feel like we had 3 different people on, and they all brought like really funny anecdotal stuff.
It was great. I had a lot of fun doing it. I was
yeah.
so nervous going into it. I hate
Same.
doing performing in front of people.
Yeah.
I always have. But it went a lot smoother than we expected, especially
Right.
considering how rocky that day started out. I'm really looking forward to having a fully functioning car the entire way down there and not having to get towed on the way home.
Knock on wood.
Knock on IKEA fiberboard.
Particle board, yeah.
Fiberboard.
But yeah, and I think also, again, probably even a little more confirmed, I think I'm going to be joining our friend Ross.
Yes.
Of
Kid Flicks.
Now I feel bad. Is it that the 30th?
That's the first. You're on the first, right? Or maybe it's the 29th.
What are calendars?
It's the Saturday. The 30th. It's the 30th. Yes, you're right.
Okay, cool.
30th of June.
And I think it's at 1 p.m. We're literally the first.
Tattooed Mom.
Yes, at Tattooed Mom.
Where
first
we performed
slot.
last year.
And then I think literally right after him, there's another pretty good film podcast where I'm on an episode partially. I sent them a little soundbite thing.
Oh, who is that?
Film Loop. It's these 2 guys. I won their Oscar prediction contest, and then they were like, "Hey, do you want to pick?"
Did you have to pick Best Picture, or you had to just pick the most out of?
No, they had like a really if we didn't do like the handies and all this other crap during that time, I was like, we should steal that idea. But it's like a really cool Google document where you fill it out and you send it in. You just have to guess what you think will win the Oscars. So luckily I wasn't competing against Mike. But then, yeah, I talked to them over Gmail for a while, and they were like, oh, you have a podcast. Why don't you just like send us your own kind of sound thing or whatever? So I did.
For the Oscar thing? Or?
Well, part of it was I think they're going to send me some of their merch or whatever because I won. And then I also get to pick like what movie they review next. And then I kind of gave my own small review of this movie. And
What did you pick?
You're going to have to find out.
Oh, it's not out yet.
You're going to, what?
Yeah.
The episode's not out yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's something I'll go into. You'll find that in an intro. We'll probably gloss back over this stuff. Maybe let's do it during like the action point. one, we can start promoting the live episodes.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what's going on with us. What's been going on with you?
How are you guys doing?
Any new developments in the world of you guys?
We could take drunk synonyms if any of you guys have drunk synonyms.
Mm-hmm.
How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast featuring two guys getting blank and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form. You can fill in the blank, or
even if you're not watching this live, go ahead and comment one.
Yeah, if you're watching
have one,
on YouTube or the post on Facebook.
Because I know,
in time.
Not everybody's going to be able to watch it at 4 or 3 p.m.
Apparently, only one person can watch it at 4 p.m.
Yeah, really. We peaked at like 3.
Yeah, and then as always, as we say pretty much every week in the intros, go check out the Facebook group. How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The Facebook group. You keep calling it How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. The Facebook group.
Oh, do I? Oh gosh.
It's How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The Facebook group. You can just search that on Google or on Facebook. Either one should lead you right to it. I should probably put a link to that on the website. I haven't thought to update that. Oops. Anyway, you can search that and join that. We've been having a lot of great discussions in there. And every time before we record, we post the movie posters for what we're going to record, and we ask for you guys to send in your thoughts about that movie. Recently, I've decided to make them, they can be spoiler filled, just with a warning about reading the comments for spoilers, just because I feel like people might.
Which is smart, yeah.
It's easier to give, as we know from having to review movies every week, it's easier to give your thoughts on a movie when you can just discuss the ending, because the ending's
It'd be so funny.
a huge part of it. Like, I mean, like, I couldn't
Only
talk.
we're allowed to talk spoilers, not you guys.
I was just trying to think about people in the group who,
of course,
I've now put a hefty warning. So if you haven't seen the movie and you see the poster, try not to read the comments there. But yeah, if you want to get shouted out on an episode, have your opinion heard and voiced, we'd love to read your thoughts on a movie on the episode. So, I mean, right now, if you can leave your thoughts on Solo or Action Point in the Facebook group, we can certainly read those before we record them today. What are we doing next batch? What are the next movies coming out?
Hereditary
for sure.
Incredibles 2, and probably Ocean's 8.
When does Jurassic World come out?
That's later in the month. It's like late, whatever. It would come out like a week or two after we record it. So
true. So yeah, stay tuned for those, and stay tuned for the episodes forthcoming. This week, Solo and Action Point the week after that. And we're going to go sign off and get ready to record those. So we'll see you guys on the next time. Later, guys. Bye.
Bye.